Welcome to Behold. I'm Beth Whitney, and today I'm joined by my friend Lucas Matthews, and we're going to talk about Chat GPT and AI. And guess what? I learned something, and I bet you will too. Here we go. Hey, Lucas.
Hello.
I'm so glad you joined me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We are going to have a very interesting conversation, I have
Yeah.
a feeling.
A very intelligent,
I hope.
artificially.
Well, we'll see. So we're going to talk a little bit about AI, Chat GPT, the church, Christians, the whole, well, not the whole thing because we only have so much time.
Right. Yeah.
A little bit. We're
A
gonna
little bit.
Stick
Scratch
our
the
big toe
surface.
in.
Right.
Okay. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So I have a ministry background. Before that, when I was in school, I studied computer science and then switched my major into philosophy.
Okay.
So basically, AI is my
Philosophy and
major.
computer
Yeah.
science. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't finish computer science, so I'm not the most qualified to talk about this, but I do like thinking deeply about technology and the church. And so I went into ministry after college, working with college students with Cru or Campus Crusade for Christ, and then transitioned from campus ministry. I was here in Sacramento into our digital ministry, working on an app called God Tools. So that's where the technology piece comes in again. And about a year ago, I transitioned out of ministry into working for the state, where I'm an IT project manager. But on the side, I've been working on products to help the church with technology and AI. And so I've been thinking about how to use AI to help benefit the church and other nonprofits for the last year or so.
Yeah.
Really ever since the whole AI craze started.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you coming and having this conversation with me because, true confession, AI feels really sci-fi to me.
Oh, yeah.
And I fall asleep in the Matrix movies at the theater. Like, that's how I feel about sci-fi.
Yeah.
So, like, you might have to have a lot of patience with me because the questions I ask might seem stupid
Totally.
just because this isn't my realm.
Yeah.
I'm not a digital native. I'm Gen X, so I
Yeah.
didn't grow up with any kind of computer until we got one hand-me-down to us, and my brother and I figured out how to program it to do super simple math problems.
Oh, that's good. That's something.
That was something. It was something on the green screen
Yeah.
with the dot matrix printer with the paper, that the
I don't
accordion
know.
paper.
I'm
You
just
don't
gonna
even
nod
know.
and
You're like,
smile.
oh yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
sure.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And then Blockbuster Video. No, I'm done. I'm done. So we just got a giggle from Chris if you heard that. So thank you. All of that to say, thank you. I hope this will help our listeners, but I know it's going to be really beneficial to me.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, it's an exciting topic, and I think there's a lot of great potential and uses for Christians, and something we can embrace and use, and to help us be better Christians and serve our communities. So
Awesome. I'm all about that.
yeah, why not?
All right, so we have heard a lot. AI, artificial intelligence, then this whole Chat GPT thing, right?
Mhm.
I even saw someone put into something, give me an image of Jesus flipping over tables. And what they got was Jesus doing a gymnastic move
Ooh,
over a
I
table
like that.
rather than,
Yes,
flipping.
that could go up on the wall.
Right.
In our arcade. Yeah.
Be kind of cool,
Yeah.
right? But can you help us understand AI? Like, what is it? What's
Yeah.
AI?
Yeah. So I like to think of AI as like a really, really good autocomplete. Like, when you're typing on your phone and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like suggesting the next word.
Yeah.
Right. It's like that, but instead of typing out a sentence, you're asking it a question, and then it's auto-completing the answer
Okay.
for you. And so how ChatGPT works, you'll hear the term like large language models, and that literally
Okay.
means like it's a large bucket of words,
Okay.
right? Like books, articles, newspapers, whatever, anything, websites, stuff like that. It's collected all of that raw data,
Mm-hmm.
and it's sifting through that data and finding connections, right? So like
Oh.
if you say the sky is, you're going to get
Blue.
a word. It could be blue, or
Yeah.
it could be falling, depending
Right.
on the context. And so what ChatGPT is doing is looking at all the instances of places where it says the sky is, and then it's figuring out probably the answer is blue.
Okay.
So it's a lot of probability, statistics, like that's the heavy math and statistics and computer science stuff that's like over my head.
Sure.
But basically it's just taking all the data out there and drawing connections and then giving you kind of what it's summarizing based on that. And so it's basically kind of impersonating what someone might say in response. And it can get really good at that.
Sure.
Because it has all this data to draw from. And so it can be really effective for that, but then you'll hear the term like hallucinations is
Okay.
what people say when the AI or the ChatGPT or whatever comes up with some weird answer that doesn't make sense. They call it a hallucination. But it kind of went down the wrong path.
Okay.
And it gave you back something that was probably connected, like on some weird tangent, but probably not what you were looking for.
Okay.
So
So it sounds like ChatGPT might be the world's very, very best librarian.
yeah, it's
Like almost like think of the biggest library you could ever imagine and somebody who can gather all the information you need and hand it to you.
yeah, that's a great example. It's like
For
if
my
they
Gen
had
X
read,
brain.
it's like if the librarian had read every book in the library
And had it
then
memorized.
could kind of piece together like an answer to your question
Okay.
based on that.
That's pretty cool.
It is really cool.
That's less scary
It's
than I
very
thought.
and it's very powerful. I mean, it's just taking what humans have already discovered and learned and documented, and then kind of pulling it together and summarizing it for you.
Yeah. So I've heard some concerns.
Okay.
And how about I express some of those concerns and then you can respond with maybe how Christians can process through or think through in a biblical way through these concerns.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll try.
Some people think that there's a bias to ChatGPT. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's bias. I believe there's bias in everything. So yeah, there's going to be bias. I mean, it's only drawing on what it's given, right? So you can actually train a large language model on any data you want. I mean, maybe not you personally, but
Absolutely not me.
right?
Personally.
So you have lots of different large language models
Okay.
that can draw from different things. And so whatever it's drawing from, it's going to reflect the bias that it's given.
Okay.
But that bias comes from people, not from it. It's not like creating a bias,
Okay.
but it's expressing the bias that already exists. So I think there's actually some really interesting implications to that of uncovering the bias that we already have by asking ChatGPT to kind of look for that
Sure.
even. But it, like with anything, you just need to be aware. Like if I go on Wikipedia and look for something, I should be aware there's maybe a bias there.
Right.
If I Google something, right, it's the
Right.
same thing. And so, yeah, there's probably bias. I'm not sure exactly what the bias is, but we should definitely be aware of that with anything.
Okay, this might be a dumb question. We live in America. Is there America Chat GPT? And then let's say I go to Asia or I live in China. Is there China's a communist country, so probably totally different. Let's say I go to Japan, not a communist. Is there different you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like if we think about context or how we even use language, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question because I can't say I'm totally sure.
Okay.
I mean, yes, there could definitely be other language models in a different language.
Right.
Also, there's connections between that, right? So translation, obviously, and so. But again, it's whatever you train the model on is what it's drawing from.
Okay.
So if you were to create a model using only Japanese literature,
Right.
it would draw from that,
Okay.
which is pretty cool because you could train a model on all of Shakespeare and then you could ask it and it could kind of be like Shakespeare.
Right.
If you were asking, or you could train a model on, the works of John Calvin, and then you could almost be like talking to John Calvin.
Yeah.
By
That'd
just
be a
typing
trip,
in.
huh?
Yeah, that'd be pretty crazy.
Would it have his Did he have an accent? I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm even thinking like, as you're talking about like it's what you put into it, I'm thinking for like a seminary student that what if there was a Chat GPT that had all of the commentaries and Bible dictionaries and
Right.
cultural context type of things where really easily you could find out,
Yeah.
oh, this is what Paul meant in Ephesians because he was talking to those people in that context, and this is what that word meant, and here's the other place.
Right. Right.
Simply,
Yeah.
rather than having to have a whole library.
Right. I think that's where generative AI, ChatGPT, large language models, all those are kind of interchangeable. I mean, they're not, but for our purposes, they
Sure.
are. That's where I think it gets really exciting because if you train it on the right stuff, if you feed it the right documents and books and literature, you can get really nuanced and like interesting responses. And so you can definitely ask it a question like, what does Ephesians 2:18 mean?
Yeah.
I don't know what that
Sure.
is, but off the top of my head. But and it will give you a response. You could do that right now, and it'll give you a response. I don't know if it's a good response or not. That's
Right.
where I think the discernment comes in, because you're not controlling what information ChatGPT has,
Right.
but it has a lot. It might have some of those commentaries,
Right.
I mean, or some articles from the Gospel Coalition
Sure.
about those commentaries. You know,
Sure.
so it
Right,
might have
right,
some of
right.
that information. The copyright, and those are all kind of issues in discussions around AI. It's like, how do you handle copyright and
Yeah.
things
How do you
like
cite your
that.
sources?
Right? Yeah. How do you cite your sources? Do you need to anymore? I don't know. Maybe we just all
Your
rely
sources,
on
the
ChatGPT.
internet.
Yeah.
www.internet.com. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I remember citing sources. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. We used to have to take 3x5 cards to the library to like keep track of the. Oh, anyway.
Yeah.
Thank the Lord for computers. Anyway, another concern
Uh-huh.
I stumbled across was people have this concern that artificial intelligence devalues humanity because, oh, now we don't need this person in this job, or a machine can do something better than a person, so we're going to use the machine. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it depends on how you look at it. Like, if you are a factory worker in the 1800s, you know, machines are going to take your job.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. That happens. And now we have more automation, but that created new jobs too.
Right. And also less child labor.
And I would argue that actually elevates humanity because now we're not doing sort of these menial tasks or tasks that are dangerous.
Right.
But we're freed up to do tasks that challenge our intellect, that push us to discover new things and exercise more creativity. Those are all things that make us human. And I think the same thing with artificial intelligence is that it's going to devalue the labor of experts and, you know, some level of experts. There's always going to be experts that are contributing to what the model knows, I think. But if you're an expert in something and you're looking at ChatGPT and be like, well, now so-and-so doesn't have to come to me. They can just go to ChatGPT. Yeah, that's probably true. And I don't know if that's going to take your job or not. But it also frees you up to maybe do different work that is more sophisticated than what ChatGPT. Like, nobody wants to just be a human dictionary.
No.
Right? Like, we want to do interesting things with what we
Right.
know.
Yeah.
And I think that's where ChatGPT is going to unlock the next level of kind of human agency, is that, hey, now we know more than ever. We have access to that knowledge. There's not as many kind of keepers of the keys of that knowledge now, which might kind of be threatening to some people, but it also frees people up to then access that knowledge and use that knowledge in ways they couldn't before.
Okay. Wow. You got me thinking.
Yeah. So
That's-
I think it's interesting. It's definitely going to be a transition period, I think, in our culture, where we're going to go from, you know, you're rewarded for what you know
Yeah.
to being rewarded for knowing what you don't know. Because if you know what you don't know,
Okay,
you can.
okay.
This is getting a little.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're a philosophy major.
Yeah. So I mean, you invited me here. So.
I did. I'm glad I did.
But what I mean is, like, you will, if you know what you don't know, you can find the answer using ChatGPT.
Okay.
Right. So if you can figure out how to ask a good question, how to write a good prompt, then you can learn a lot and access that knowledge and then you can do something really exciting with it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where kind of the next level is going to be, is people who are really good at that are going to be able to maybe slide into those jobs.
Okay.
And that kind of thing.
So would chat be, can't even talk.
I know, they should name it something else.
My brain's like, whew. Yeah, why didn't they name it something easy to say? Whatever. It probably GPT stands for something.
It does.
Lots of big words.
I won't get into that. Yeah.
Thank you. I wouldn't remember anyway. But I'm thinking like those question words, like what, when, where, why, how, who, right? So Chat GPT is probably good at answering what, where, who, but maybe not so good at how and why.
Yeah, I think, and that might change over time, right? Like one of the big stories in AI recently was they entered a contract with time.com to gather, to be able to query from all of those articles and magazines and all that stuff. And so I think there's maybe not a limit to like the types of questions it can answer. But I think we always have to ask, like, is it right? Is it true?
Yeah.
Like just because it says something doesn't mean it's right.
Just because it's on the internet
exactly.
doesn't mean it's true.
Right.
I think that's a quote from Abraham Lincoln. I saw it on the internet. Sorry, a little off track there.
Yeah.
You tell this makes me a little uncomfortable because I'm like, ah! Okay, so let's transition to thinking about more in the church, Christians, the usage of Chat GPT. So who in the church might Chat GPT help, and how might it be helpful?
I think everybody in the church. I mean, not to give like a rote answer, but I mean, everyone can benefit from tools like ChatGPT. I think of leaders in the church, right? Like, I mean, I hope Lifeway's not listening to this, but I mean, you can just write a Bible study using ChatGPT.
Yeah.
You can just ask, hey, write me a Bible study on Ephesians 2, and it will give you a bunch of really great questions. And you can tweak it from there and hone it in. Like, I don't think we should always be critical and engaging with ChatGPT. It's a conversation, not just, if you use it like a glorified Google, like just ask it a question and then get a result, that's fine, but it can do a lot more. I think if you ask it a question, get a result, and then ask it to tweak that question and go deeper on that question, or try this instead, or, do that again, but add this aspect to it, make it more funny, make it more, insightful or something. You can go a lot farther with ChatGPT. And so I think for leaders in the church, you can sort of outsource some of that work to ChatGPT, and that frees you up. When I was in ministry, it was like, I really liked writing Bible studies because I was kind of a nerd. But really what I needed to be doing was hanging out with my students.
Right.
And spending time with them.
Right.
And I spent way too long writing sermons or Bible studies or talks or whatever, right?
Like
that's a huge...
in your office, at your desk, at your computer.
I'm just writing away, And some leaders, pastors are really good at trimming that time down. But I think for a lot of people, it takes a long time. I know some pastors that spend 30 hours a week writing a sermon. So that leaves 10 hours a week for working with their staff or meeting with people,
or
doing
they're
counseling.
Working 20 or 30 more hours on top of those 30 hours.
Exactly. Yeah, right. And so I think you can use ChatGPT to do some of that intellectual legwork so that you can spend more time actually applying the text and thinking about, how does this make sense for my audience?
Yeah.
How can we apply it together as a community? How can I talk to my people and get their feedback on what we're doing, or which direction we should go, things like that. So I think it frees up leaders to kind of automate some of those tasks, and then they can really do the really, like, if I don't know, like you can spend all day studying the Greek for some nuance, right? But you can get that nuance from ChatGPT maybe right away. And then now you're freed up to think about, how do I apply that interesting fact to our church? And that gets, I think, more exciting.
Yeah.
And that's what I think most people in ministry want to do, is they want to impact people, not just read books all day. And so ChatGPT allows them to do that. And then thinking about, volunteers, lay leaders who are working a full-time job, and then, preaching a guest sermon or leading a Bible study or something like that, where they really want to be doing ministry, but as a layperson.
Right.
ChatGPT is great because you can work your job and then you can say, ChatGPT, write us a Bible study for tonight, and we've got something to work on tonight. Rather than I've got to spend a bunch of time prepping that or thinking about this. I think you could even sort of treat ChatGPT like your Bible study leader.
Okay.
And say, okay, we're going to read this together.
Yeah.
Give us 10 questions to help our conversation, right? Because the goal of our Bible study or community groups is to talk with each other, right?
Right.
And if I'm spending a bunch of time trying to come up with questions and all that stuff, it takes away from that.
Sure.
And so ChatGPT can help you prepare those things, or even just in the moment lead you through some questions, and then your group can just talk about it and play with it.
Yeah. So one thing came to mind when we first had our conversation, and then I saw something in action this past week on the LA mission trip. So the first thing that came to mind is my friends down in Mexico. They are raising up healthy leaders, but part of the weight of being a pastor in Mexico is you're bivocational.
Yeah.
So you are working 6 days a week.
Right.
Because that's how many days a week you work in Mexico.
Yeah.
And then you're spending time on top of that, preparing a sermon, loving your congregation, meeting needs, all of this, right?
Right.
Probably the only pastor on staff.
Yeah.
And thinking of how, like, there's legwork that could be done that doesn't make you less spiritual or a bad pastor or not a good student, but gives you time to take the info and process it into, here's what my congregation needs to hear, or here's how my congregation can apply this, or this is how this will impact my community, because you have a 60-hour-a-week job that you're trying to do to earn enough money for your family on top of leading a congregation.
Right.
But then also, so when the high schoolers got down to the church in LA, they found out that their kids camp, they have a whole group of middle schoolers that attend. And so that kind of changed everything up, because they didn't want to do the little kid activities during the Bible time. They wanted to break into small groups and have small group questions, but they don't have time to do all the things.
Right.
And so one of the girls, MJ, was just like, the very first day, Beth, can you help me write small group questions? And they don't have their phones with them down there. So I get on my phone and I Google small group questions for the prodigal son. That wasn't Zacchaeus.
Yeah.
And so we looked through the questions that Google came up with and, refined or, combed through and decided which ones would work best. And the rest of the week, she just kept borrowing my phone and preparing, because we didn't know we were having middle schoolers, and she didn't have time to create 5 questions for 5 days.
Yeah.
And so we had access to something that gave us those questions.
Really makes doing the ministry a lot easier in terms of the preparation.
Yeah.
Like, a lot goes into writing good questions, trying to lead someone through a passage, and that's all good work.
Right.
But I think there's even better work that we can do, where, ChatGPT isn't going to be there and cry with someone or celebrate with someone, right? But ChatGPT can write a Bible study for you.
Right.
And so it frees you up to be present.
Right.
And I think that's, just more of what Jesus did. Right. Not to be like cheesy.
And writing the Bible study is just giving you the questions to do the work. It's not doing the work.
Right. Exactly.
Right. It's not helping you understand what Ephesians 2 says.
Yeah.
It's giving you thought-provoking questions as you're reading Ephesians 2 and discussing it with someone or your group or whatever.
Right. I think in the American evangelical church, we've sometimes gotten it backwards, where our content creators are the people that do the work.
Yeah.
and the people that are, actually day to day with people kind of get overlooked.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really great reversal that ChatGPT might bring about, is that anybody can write a great sermon with ChatGPT, but not anybody can be in Arden Arcade and lead these people and reach out to this community. And so I think that's where a really good thing is going to happen because of ChatGPT, where it's going to level the playing field and make the church really think about how can we be more incarnational in our ministry.
Do you think, okay, so AI and ChatGPT feels very up here.
Yeah.
But the more we're talking, the more I'm realizing we've probably been using apps and the internet in a similar fashion. For example, Pinterest.
Okay.
Kids ministry leader, Pinterest is a lifesaver.
Yeah.
Because someone else has already thought of a game or a video or a craft or an object lesson of the Bible story that my Sunday school teacher can't be here. I'm on in a half an hour.
Yeah.
Right. So I go on Pinterest and I can pull together stuff.
Yeah.
And that doesn't seem too far away.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can now do that in ChatGPT, right? Give me an object lesson for this passage and it'll come up with something.
Right.
There might be cases where Pinterest can give you better high quality content, but in that situation, it's more about getting it quickly than getting it really well. So there's a trade-off there, I think. But yeah, you can have it generate images or even songs, I think. So it can get pretty wild and crazy, but you can use it for all sorts of things like that.
Yeah. So have you seen someone, or maybe yourself, where you have actually used ChatGPT in a ministry setting?
Let me think. Have I seen that yet? I've definitely seen like ministry people using ChatGPT, like personally. I don't know. I think I've definitely seen some use cases. I'm not sure if they actually did it or not.
Okay.
It's like, okay, that could have been done by ChatGPT.
Oh.
I don't know if they did it that way or not.
Yeah.
I was just actually thinking about it this morning and using ChatGPT for a few different use cases, like personally.
Okay.
So one was in like a morning devotional situation, right? Like I'm sure a lot of people have felt this way, where you kind of open your Bible and you're like, I don't know what to do with this morning. Like, not feeling it. I'm not really in that great like mood to just like meditate and just be really spiritual right now. But ChatGPT can be a great help.
Okay.
So you could ask it something like, let's see here. It's so this is the prompt I used this morning. I'm reading the Bible this morning, and I would like you to help me understand the passage and prompt me with application questions to help me apply the passage to my life. And ChatGPT responds, of course, I'd be happy to help you with that.
Wow, it's so polite.
Oh, very polite.
I didn't know.
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. It's great. Please share the passage you're reading, and I'll assist you with understanding it and provide some application questions. I said the passage I'm reading is Ephesians 2, 8 through 10. And says, so it gave me the passage in the NIV, which according to my memory, it was correct. I didn't actually like check it. You always check it. It's probably a good idea. But then it gave me some 3 points summarizing it, the ideas. They're all pretty good. And then it gave me 5 application questions. So one of them was, how do you feel knowing that your salvation is a gift from God and not something you have to earn?
It's a great question.
It's a great question. And it gets you
not
thinking.
A yes or no question.
Right. And it gets you thinking.
And the answer's not Jesus.
Yeah. I don't need like some, like Instagram question to like really get me going. Like I just need something to help me when I'm not feeling it. Give me some questions to think about. Right. And so you can, if you prompt ChatGPT well, it can be really helpful for just even your personal day-to-day experience in spirituality. Let's see. There was another one. Oh, so like creating a Bible study. Oh, so I asked ChatGPT to, this wasn't a real life situation, but hypothetical situation. A few friends and I would like to discuss the Bible together. Lead us through a Bible study of Philippians 1 through 10 by asking observation questions, interpretation questions, and application questions. Ask one question at a time.
Okay.
And wait for us to respond with next question before moving on to the next question.
Oh,
We may also ask questions as we go along. So you can set up a whole prompt.
that's not unthinking.
Right.
Like people might think, oh, you're using ChatGPT because you
Yeah.
don't want to think.
Right.
Like that's a very thoughtful question.
Yeah.
Very layered and nuanced.
You're setting it up. But what that also does, I mean, how many times have you experienced like you're in a Bible study and it's like, well, you're the leader.
Yeah.
So you have to have the good questions and whatever you say is right.
No pressure.
So as a leader.
Yes, lots of times.
Yeah. It's so relieving to be like, hey, I'm not leading this. ChatGPT is leading this. So if it's a weird question, whatever, we'll all laugh about it. Takes the pressure off you as a leader, and now you get to engage more as a peer.
Yeah, it evens the playing field.
So it evens it out, yeah.
I like that.
And so, so it said, great, let's start with Philippians 1 through 10. And please have the passage open for reference. Here's the first observation question. Who are the authors of this letter, and who are the recipients mentioned in verse 1? Pretty good observation question.
Yep.
Whoops. Please give us the passage. We forgot our Bibles. So no problem. Here's Philippians 1 through 10, NIV. It gave it to us. Now back to the first question. It wants to keep you on track. Doesn't want you to get off.
Kind of a
ask the question
taskmaster
again.
there. Polite, but like, come on.
Polite, but it's going to keep you on time.
Okay.
I said, Paul and Timothy are the authors, but who are God's holy people? Great observation. God's holy people, also referred to as saints, are the believers in Christ Jesus at Philippi, which includes all Christians in that community. Next question. What does Paul express in his prayers for the Philippians according to verses 3 and 4? So it just keeps you going.
Okay.
So you could literally have it just keep going through all these questions, and you're discussing, all right, are we done with that question? All right, next question, and it'll keep it going, right? So you can use it for situations like that, for discipleship or for, small group Bible study or community groups and that kind of thing.
Okay, I'm becoming more comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm feeling like this isn't such a weird thing.
Yeah.
Like iRobot's not going to take over our world.
Well, it might, but
Yeah, well,
nothing
got to
you
try
do.
something. Okay, so what does the future look like for the church and AI?
Yeah. I think
if you could look into the future.
Yeah. I think kind of similar to what we've talked about already. I think there's going to be a trend away from kind of these big content machines that are generating a ton of content, which is great content. But it's going to be a lot more accessible to create this content for yourself. So Bible study questions, sermons, all this stuff that's out there is a lot more accessible through ChatGPT. And so I think it's going to become more important for the church to have a ministry of presence, to be embedded in its community, to not just speak the word. We always want to speak the word, but maybe spend less time, trying to figure out every theological nuance, and more time doing the work, being embedded in the community, talking with people. That was another example I wanted to give of using ChatGPT as like your evangelism buddy.
Okay.
So you could ask it, hey, I have a friend who's, Muslim, and I don't know much about Islam. Can you give me a rundown of the differences between Christianity and Islam? Can you give me a few questions to ask my Muslim friend? You could have ChatGPT facilitate a conversation between you and your friend, right? It makes it less me versus you and more kind of that third party that's asking questions and guiding a discussion. And so I think you'll see more things like that where we're using AI to facilitate, to kind of do that intellectual work that frees us up to do the emotional, spiritual, relational work that I think we all want to be doing. And I think there'll be some trends in different products for the church to use AI in some really helpful ways. What if Logos you could use AI to query your library in Logos, right? And sort of use that, kind of train the model on your books that you have.
Right.
And then, ask it a question and it'll draw from those books that you have. So kind of getting more specific with what the models are trained on. Or even generating content based on your sermons, right? Like you have these transcripts of sermons, generate some content based on some Facebook posts, or generate a blog post based on last Sunday's sermon. Or maybe more interesting, generate 5 application questions based on this sermon from last week, and then send that out to the church to be thinking about. So it's kinds of those, some of those kinds of things where it can make generating content a lot easier and maybe more applicable and things like that. The thing I'm working on right now, I mentioned working on products for the church using AI. The thing I'm working on right now is, what if you could get feedback from a large group of people and then summarize that feedback and give you something to work on. I think that's where nonprofits and churches, I know from my experience, sometimes it feels like leading in the dark. And what if you could gather a lot of feedback quickly, and then AI could help you analyze that and synthesize it and say, okay, like, yeah, let's respond to this feedback and go in this direction as a church. I get really excited about that because I think sometimes it's hard for leaders to kind of get everyone's perspective. It's kind of...
It is hard.
Yeah.
Because there's the squeaky wheel.
Right.
Or there's your friends or the people you're more familiar with, and then there's the people who almost don't let you in.
Right.
Right? And so you're trying to figure out, I mean, I'm trying to figure out, okay, I have all of these families in my ministry, brand new parents to they're on their last kid. Yeah. They're 17 and a half, they're almost done. And, the pay scale for everyone is different, and all the things, right? And then trying to gather enough information to understand what the needs are feels undaunting. Like it's an impossible task.
Right. If you tried to get that information and sift through it, how could you possibly really, there are people that are paid a lot of money to do that kind of work for big companies, for a church or a small church or whatever, a nonprofit in general, like that doesn't have the resources to go hire a professional research person.
Right.
What if you could, query your community, non-Christians around in your city, and get feedback from them on, how do you feel, Arcade does at reaching out and providing good services or whatever. Like there's all these kinds of things where if we can get that data, we can now use AI to help us use it well. And that's what I think AI does, is it helps us use the information we already have, or the information that we're getting, and actually apply it. And that's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, because how do you help, or how do you come alongside if you don't know?
Yeah, yeah.
And then you have the data, but then you don't have time.
It's like I could have all the books I want in my library, but if I haven't read them, if I don't know how to apply them, and I think that's where AI comes in. It can do that work of reading and learning, and then it can help you actually apply it.
That's fascinating. Okay, I'm less scared.
Good.
I didn't fall asleep.
That's also very good, considering you're hosting this podcast.
Well, yeah, that would be really rude. And maybe a little awkward. Yeah. But I feel way more informed and less intimidated.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Good. Yeah.
Is there anything else you just are like, I got to say this?
No, I mean, I think it's not something to be scared of.
Yeah.
And if it was really bad, we couldn't do anything about it anyway. So don't worry about it.
Why borrow worry?
Yeah. Right? Use it to glorify God, to grow, to help people. With anything can be misused. So it's not, it's neutral. It's just using it in ways that are helpful. Right.
Because like, I know people worried about plagiarism, but you can sell your sermons online.
Right.
You can buy sermons online. Yeah. It's nothing new. Exists. People have been plagiarizing for generations.
Yeah. It maybe makes it easier, but it's still there. So I think it's just, are we using it in ways that are good and helpful? Like we should with anything.
Right. Well, speaking of that, I'm going to transition over to our Behold portion of the podcast. I decided to share Romans 12, 1 and 2, and then 9 through 16 with you. So let me read that. Therefore, brothers and sisters, in view of the mercies of God, I urge you to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true worship. Do not be conformed to this age, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may discern what is the good, pleasing, and perfect will of God. Let love be without hypocrisy. Detest evil, cling to what is good. Love one another deeply as brothers and sisters. Take the lead in honoring one another. Do not lack diligence and zeal. Be fervent in the spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in affliction. Be persistent in prayer. Share with the saints in their needs. Pursue hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud. Instead, associate with the humble. Do not be wise in your own estimation. There's so many things there that we could pull out that has to do with,
Yeah.
right? Because present your bodies. Your mind is a part of your body.
Yeah.
So however you use Chat GPT or AI, you should honor the Lord with it.
Yeah.
Right? And if we are using Chat GPT to help us do kind of the menial side of things, then we have time to love one another deeply and honor each other and share and pursue hospitality, all of those outward expressions of the gospel in our hearts, right?
Yeah, I think we've done a lot of renewing of our minds in maybe the American church specifically, and now we can transform our minds as well by applying all that knowledge using ChatGPT to help us apply it. I was thinking of don't associate with the proud, but be humble.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great attitude to bring to ChatGPT is to ask questions, be humble, ask questions of ChatGPT, quite literally, like ask it questions, come at it from a very kind of learner's attitude, and that's going to help you get the most out of it as well.
Now that we've read this, another question popped in my head. So we're going to break the podcast rules.
Okay, just keep it going.
Okay, and
Round
keep going. Could you ask ChatGPT, what are the greatest needs in my community?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think you could.
Okay.
Nothing's stopping you. It might not give you the best answers because in order for it to answer that question, it would need to have data about your community.
So could you say, what are the greatest needs in this zip code? Or in this school district? Or
potentially. Okay. It's what is it going to look at?
You got to refine the question.
It's going to maybe draw from. It's only going to draw from the data it's been trained on, right? So if it's been trained on census data or which it could be, you can feed it anything, and who knows? I mean, that's one of the things we don't really know what it's been trained on, other than it's been trained on a lot, and we know there's a time it's only been trained up to a certain time.
Sure.
Period, right? So it's not going to be reading today's newspaper.
Okay.
But one day it could, and certainly, there could be products that would add that to it, and so there's a lot of potential there. But you could certainly, try asking it that. It might help you come up with some ideas or things like that. But I think that's definitely an area to lean into with ChatGPT is help me know how to serve people better.
Yep.
I think there's some great stuff there.
Awesome. Well, Lucas, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you joining me today. I hope that our audience has learned something and is more educated and less afraid or intimidated by AI and ChatGPT. I know for sure I am.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining me.
Yeah.
If you get a chance, share this podcast with somebody, subscribe, do all the things to help get the word out.
Is it down here?
Smash that like button.
Is it down here?
I think so.
Where is it on the?
Right?
I don't know. Wherever it is.
Wherever it is.
You can find it.
We believe in you. Ask ChatGPT.
Ask ChatGPT.
Where's the like button?
Yeah.
Until next time, take care. We'll see ya.